It was the kind of wedding that made Instagram tremble: rose gold chandeliers, imported orchids, guests dressed like they'd just stepped out of a lifestyle magazine. My sister-in-law, Kemi, was getting married, and everything about the ceremony screamed dream come true. But from the moment I arrived, something felt off. I was seated 2 rows behind the groom's side when Kemi, dressed in glittering lace and grace, leaned over and whispered through her teeth, "Amina, please, don't sit near him." Her voice was low, firm, but trembling. I blinked, confused. "What?" She smiled quickly at guests passing by, then repeated, "Don't sit near him. Please." The him in question was Colonel, her new husband. A tall, magnetic man with the easy charm of a politician and the empty eyes of a crocodile. I'd only met him twice before, the engagement party and one rushed brunch, but I hadn't sensed anything sinister. Just a little too polished. "Why?" I asked, but Kemi was already gone, carried off by bridesmaids into the sea of clicking cameras. I did as she asked, stepping back from my assigned table and sliding into an empty chair next to a quiet man in glasses, reading something on his phone. He looked up and offered a tight-lipped smile. The tag in front of him read Mr. Adigan, family attorney. "Running from someone too?" he asked lightly. I laughed, unsure. "Something like that." As the music swelled and the couple danced in, applause and glitter filled the air, but I couldn't take my eyes off Kemi's expression. She was smiling, yes, but only when people looked. When they turned away, her face would fall like a curtain. It wasn't until weeks later that I understood the warning. Kemi had always been vibrant, the kind of woman who made friends in bank queues and strangers confide in her at airports. But after the wedding, she became a shadow. She wouldn't return my calls. The only time she did pick up, she whispered, "I made a mistake." "Is he hurting you?" Pause. "No. Not yet." The truth came out one rainy Thursday afternoon, over pepper soup and soft yam. Kemi finally invited me to her house, the massive duplex that felt more like a silent cathedral than a home. "Do you see this?" she whispered, holding out her wrist. "Faint bruises. Not fresh, but not old either." He said I embarrassed him in front of his boss. All I did was disagree with him about a joke. I froze. She continued, "He says I'm too opinionated. Too loud. That I don't act like a real wife." "But why didn't you tell me before the wedding?" I asked, trembling. "I tried. That day, when I told you not to sit near him, I wanted to warn you. But I was scared. I thought if I just survived the wedding, things would change." "They never do," I murmured. "He's careful. Very careful. He doesn't leave marks where people can see them. He always says sorry after. He brings gifts. Expensive ones. So my mother thinks I'm just being ungrateful." I took the conversation to our mother. But true to Kemi's words, Mama dismissed it. "That man is a provider. A gentleman. And you, Pamina, you've never been married. You don't understand these things." I almost screamed. "What's there to understand about violence?" Mama waved me off. "Marriage is not a bed of roses." The final straw came 6 months later. Kemi was hospitalized. Internal bleeding. She slipped and fell, they said. But when I visited, she stared at me with bloodshot eyes and whispered, "He pushed me." That night, I did something I never imagined. I went to see Mr. Adigan, the same lawyer from the wedding. He remembered me immediately. "I was wondering when one of you would come," he said. "You know, your sister almost didn't sign the prenup. She cried for an hour. Said she felt like a prisoner." "She is," I whispered. "Can you help her?" He nodded slowly. "But it won't be easy. This man has friends in high places. Politicians. Lawyers. He'll fight. And your family, if they're not supportive, can complicate things even more. I'll be her family. We met secretly, collecting evidence. Voice recordings. Text messages. Medical reports. One message read, "Next time you embarrass me like that, you'll be eating through a straw." Another, "Don't think anyone will believe you. I'm too respected." The lawyer prepared the case. It was airtight. We just needed one final statement from Kemi herself. The night before the submission, I sat with her on the hospital balcony. Her face was bruised, her spirit cracked, but there was a flicker in her eyes. "I'm scared," she said. "You should be. But fear can also mean you're ready." She looked at me, tears forming. "I always thought love meant endurance." "No. It means protection." Silence. Then she said, "Okay. Let's end this." The divorce process was brutal. Public humiliation. Tabloid headlines. Family backlash. Our own mother didn't speak to us for weeks. She accused me of corrupting my sister, breaking her home. But Kemi stood strong. With every court session, every testimony, her voice grew firmer. In the end, she walked away with her freedom and nothing else. No alimony. No property. Not even her car. Just her dignity. The wedding pictures no longer hang in her house. She now rents a modest flat, works at a community center for women, and wears her scars with pride. One day, she said something that stuck with me. "You remember the day of my wedding? When I warned you not to sit near him?" I nodded. She smiled faintly. "I'm glad you listened. But I'm even more glad you chose to sit with the lawyer instead. That changed everything. Because sometimes, saving someone's life doesn't start with a fight. It starts with choosing where to sit." 3 months after the divorce, Kemi had just begun to breathe freely again when the threats started. Anonymous calls in the middle of the night. Shuffled footsteps outside her door. A black SUV parked across from her apartment for hours with tinted windows. She called the police once, but they said there was no proof of wrongdoing. Colonel had lost the public battle, but now he was waging a silent war. "I'm not safe," she told me one night, her hands trembling as she sipped cold tea. "He's punishing me for leaving, but doing it from the shadows." We installed cameras. Got pepper spray. Adigan suggested a restraining order, but we knew Colonel would find other ways. He had money, influence, and a bruised ego. But Kemi refused to vanish into fear again. So she did the unthinkable. She held a seminar on living with scars, the reality of domestic abuse in affluent homes. Her face was there on the flyers. Her name, her voice, her truth. I worried he'd retaliate. And he did. 1 week after the seminar, Kemi's job let her go. No explanation. Just budget cuts. But we both knew Colonel had made a call. He still had strings to pull in places that mattered. Still, she didn't stop. More women began reaching out. Sharing stories. Some even leaving their own marriages. Kemi had become a light, flickering, yes, but one the darkness couldn't quite extinguish. Then one night, she received a letter. Typed. No name. No signature. Just one line. You embarrassed the wrong man. Watch your back. She stared at it for a long time, then handed it to me without a word. This ends now, I said. We contacted Odigan again, this time not for defense, but offense. I want to sue him for harassment, Kemi said, her voice steady. Odigan looked surprised. Are you sure? It could be war. Kemi smiled bitterly. It already is. The courtroom was quieter this time, no press, no flashing cameras, just the cold presence of consequence. Colonel sat across the aisle, smirking. He had his lawyers, 3 of them. Kemi had only Odigan and me by her side. But what she lacked in legal firepower, she carried in undeniable truth. As the hearing began, evidence was laid out like a trail of bruises and silence, phone records, CCTV footage, emails traced back to fake accounts that matched Colonel's VPN. The anonymous letter tracked to a printer in one of his friend's offices. And then came Kemi's testimony. She didn't cry this time. Her voice was calm, even cold at times. She spoke of fear, of manipulation, of how even after the marriage ended, Colonel still wanted to own her choices, her silence. You cannot cage someone and then punish them for breathing after escape, she said. That line stayed with everyone in the room. Colonel's lawyers tried to discredit her. Called her bitter, vindictive. Said she was fabricating everything because of a broken heart. But the judge wasn't blind. And more importantly, he wasn't deaf. In the end, a restraining order was granted. And though Colonel wasn't imprisoned, his power took a public blow. He lost clients, allies, and most of all, control. Outside the courthouse, Kemi stood beneath the sun and exhaled. I thought I needed closure, she said. But what I needed was my voice. She now runs a shelter for women who are afraid to speak. The first bed in that shelter is empty, reserved always, for the next version of herself who might walk through that door. Moral ending. Sometimes, the most powerful resistance begins not with confrontation, but with where you choose to stand or sit. Kemi chose to survive, and in doing so, gave others permission to do the same. Because survival isn't silence, it's a voice rediscovered.